Hi and welcome to another story, and today we have part 1 of Birthday Boy by David Baddiel, starting from the very beginning, part 1, for He's a Jolly Good Fellow. Chapter 1, Birthday Boy. Sam Green was really looking forward to his 11th birthday. I mean, really. He couldn't wait. In the days leading up to it, his birthday was on the 8th of September. He simply wouldn't talk about anything else. "Have you sorted your school bag, Sam?" his mother Vicky would say in the morning. "I'm thinking an Adventure Time cake this year, Mum," Sam would reply, "with Finn, Jake and Ice King figures. What do you think?" "I think you should get your school bag sorted," she'd answer. "Do you want to play football?" his friends would say to him at break time. "What about a magic party?" he would reply. "You all come, having learnt a different magic trick, right? And then we each perform it in turn. Me last, of course, and then..." "Where are you going?" "To play football," they'd answer. "Break's nearly over." "What would you like for dinner?" his dad Charlie would say to him and his younger sister Ruby in the evening. Ruby would open her mouth and say, "Actually," she said, "actually a lot. I fancy Shep." But before she got any further, Sam would be saying, "I'd like a telescope and a skateboard and new trainers and a guinea pig and a toolkit and an iPod and some of David Walliams' books." "Herd's pie?" Ruby would say. "For dinner," I said. "Sam," his dad would say, "not for your birthday." Obviously, Sam wouldn't always say these things, and so obviously the people he was speaking to wouldn't always say those things back. No, sometimes it would be a different type of cake, a different style of party, and a different list of presents, although always including a telescope. Sam was a big fan of Star Trek and sci-fi generally, and wanted to see as much of the solar system as he could from the window of his room in order to watch out for visiting aliens, which did mean that he had ended up with a very long present list, and a very long selection of party theme ideas, which in turn presented a bit of a problem for his mum and dad, both in terms of choice and in terms of money, because they didn't have a lot of that. But the thing that never changed was Sam's excitement about the day, and then finally it came. Chapter 2. "Oh, Mum, Dad, that was amazing! What an amazing day!" Sam was saying as he undressed in his bedroom. It was 10 p.m. on Saturday the 8th of September. The last of his friends, all of whom went to Brackett Wood, the local primary school, had left. Vicky and Charlie were smiling at him. "So, did you like your party?" said Vicky. "Yes, especially the sci-fi cake in the shape of the Starship Enterprise, with 6 different gobstoppers for planets all around it, and candy Klingons and other aliens on the sides. Great idea, Mum." "Yes, well, it was your idea, Sam. I think it was a cake suggestion number 4. You made it last Monday." "And the film theme fancy dress really worked, didn't it, Dad? Everyone's costume was great. Barry Bennett looked brilliant as Gru from Despicable Me, and Ellie and Fred Stone as Minions, and Malcolm Bailey as the Sloth from Zootropolis, and Maurice Fawcett as Homer Simpson." "Well," said Charlie, "that was your idea too. Party suggestion number 7. "And you looked great," said Vicky, grimacing as she pulled off Sam's wally head and feet. "Well, that's why I won the best costume prize." "No, actually, that's because it was your party," said Ruby, wandering into the room. She'd been allowed to stay up a little bit later, as it was Sam's birthday. Ruby had a tendency to be very direct about everything, in a 7-year-old way, but she was a very clever 7-year-old. "So everyone thought you had to win. In fact, Mum and Dad basically bribed all your friends to vote for you by giving them extra cake and..." "Yes, all right, Ruby. Time to clean your teeth," said Charlie, taking her hand and leading her, a little forcefully, towards the door. "Dad, Mum, for my birthday, can I have a kitten?" said Ruby, as she was leaving the room, books tucked under her arm, to do extra homework as usual. This was another thing Ruby said a lot, as well as "actually." Sometimes she combined them and said, "Actually, Mum and Dad, can I have a kitten?" even when no one had asked her what she wanted. "Well," said Vicky. Said Charlie. Ruby didn't look surprised. She was used to her mum and dad saying, in answer to the kitten question, but that didn't mean she was going to let it go either. "Sam got a guinea pig," she said pointedly. Spock, which indeed was something else on Sam's birthday list that his parents had managed to get him. They looked over to said guinea pig, in its cage on the floor. It was a brown and white one, with a little tuft on its head. Sam had decided to call the guinea pig Spock, after the extremely logical, cold character in Star Trek. Spock looked back at them with quite a strong sense of, "I think that name is really unfair." "Ruby," said Charlie, "you know what a kitten will become." "Yes, actually I do, Dad. I'm 7, not an idiot. A cat." "OK, so a grown cat, unlike Spock, will need some outside space. We haven't got any." "Yes, we have," said Ruby, pointing to the window. "What's all that stuff out there?" "Oh, right. I see. Is the cat going to go down by itself from the 17th floor in the lift that smells of wee? Ruby sighed, as if that question was ridiculous, which it kind of was. We'll think about it, said Mum. Said Dad. Ruby nodded, feeling her point had been made, and turned to go out of the room. Night, Sam. Hope you had a great birthday. I did, he replied. Chapter 3. The Star Watcher Explorer. Sam looked up at his mum. She was buttoning his new pyjamas, which were covered in little UFOs. Sam, of course, being 11, could do up his own pyjama buttons, but he knew it was something his mum still liked to do. And I loved all my presents, the skateboard and the computer games, and the new trainers, and the DIY toolkit, and the books. Everything on your list, said Vicky. Well, apart from the iPod. Sorry about that, Sam. Maybe next year. It doesn't matter, Mum. You got me the telescope. That was my big present. I love it. They looked over to the window. There it was, the Star Watcher Explorer. Sam's dad had already set it up on a tripod and angled it against the window, pointing at the moon. It was black and sleek and long with computerised tracker to allow Sam to find particular constellations. Sam and his family lived in a tower block, Noam Chomsky House, on the 17th floor. So it was the best present ever. They were so high up that Sam had an uninterrupted view of the night sky and all its stars. You should be able to see any aliens out there with that, eh, Sam? Said Charlie. I don't think so, shouted a voice from outside the room. It was Ruby's. Actually, the nearest planet capable of sustaining life is 4 light-years away. How far is that? Said Sam. In miles. There was a silence, but only for a few seconds. 235 billion, give or take the odd mile. OK, said Charlie, but we don't know how fast their spacecrafts travel, do we? Well, anyway, said Vicky, looking out of the window at the night sky above the city, I just have a feeling that there is life out there somewhere. Charlie smiled. He knew that his wife had a lot of faith in her feelings. He loved that about her, even if he didn't have so much faith in her feelings. Is that like the feeling, he said, putting his arm around her, you had yesterday about how I shouldn't walk under that ladder, and so I didn't, and fell in that huge puddle instead? She pushed him away, but smiled as she did it. It didn't cost too much, did it? Asked Sam, going over to the telescope. Sam's dad was a manager at Homefront, a big building supply store, and his mum worked at home buying and selling stuff on the internet, so they weren't exactly rich, though it did also mean that Dad had been able to get a staff discount on the toolkit, something Sam had really wanted, as he loved making and fixing things. Don't worry about that, said Vicky. It's your birthday. She looked over at the telescope. Are the stars out? If you see a shooting one, you can wish on it. You should wish on it. Really, said Sam. Does that actually, work? Yes, said Vicky confidently. Charlie looked at her and raised an eyebrow. Well, no one really knows, do they? She said defiantly. Said Charlie, bending down and checking the telescope lens. Well, what I would say is that tonight is too cloudy to see the stars anyway. Never mind, said Sam. We'll look for it tomorrow. He climbed up the little ladder and got into bed. It was a bunk bed, and sometimes Sam would show how good he was at balancing on that ladder by walking up without using his hands, although tonight he was too tired for that. Oh, and I liked it when the grands and grandpas came round for lunch, he said. They didn't even fight. I know, said Vicky, clearly surprised herself. They were on their best behaviour. Yes, said Sam, settling his head on the pillow. Grandpa Sam didn't even swear at Grandpa Mike, and Grandpa Mike didn't even punch him or threaten to get his boys on him or anything, and Grandma Glenda and Grandma Poppy even smiled at each other. I think that might have been a snarl, said his dad. Shh, Charlie. Anyway, you should go to sleep now, Sammy, said Sam's mum. I imagine you're exhausted. Specially, said his dad, having got up at the dot of 6 in the morning. Was that the time, said Sam. Well, it was 1 minute past 6 when you were knocking on our bedroom door demanding presents, I'm sure of that. But that was my favourite bit, said Sam. Of what? Of my birthday. I love how exciting it is to wake up on your birthday and realise that it is your birthday. This day you've been waiting for so long, it's finally here. Yes, said Vicky. That is very exciting. Not quite as exciting when you get to 43, though, said Charlie, and Vicky laughed at his joke in a grown-ups laughing at grown-up stuff kind of way. Isn't it? Said Sam. Pardon? Said Charlie. Exciting. Isn't it exciting any more? Your birthday. His mum and dad looked at each other. Well, said Vicky, looking back at Sam kindly and pulling his duvet back across him. It's always nice, yes, but maybe not quite as nice as it was when you're 10, or when that, of course, turns into 11. Sam nodded, but then shook his head. I'd like it to be my birthday every day, he said. His parents smiled, and then both of them got on the bed with him, climbed up the ladder and everything, and put their arms around him, something that in this family was referred to as a bundle hug. Wait for me, said Ruby, as she hurried back into the room. She climbed up and joined the bundle hug. She was holding a big science textbook, which made it a bit uncomfortable. Then, after that, Vicky said, "I'm glad the day went so well, Ruby. Back to your room, Sam. So, Sam, time to go to bed." And Sam smiled at her and shut his eyes. Chapter 4, 11:59 p.m. Normally, Sam had no problem sleeping. Normally, he was out as soon as his head hit the pillow, and his parents were right. He should have been more ready for sleep than ever, given how early he'd been up that morning. But his birthday had been so great, and he was still so excited that Sam just couldn't sleep. He found himself tossing and turning in his bed, thinking of how much he just wanted to stay up and play with all his presents. Also, he thought, looking at the numbers on the clock by his bedside, 10:24. It's still my birthday. For another hour and 36 minutes. What am I thinking of? Going to sleep? No, he also thought, I should be up, doing birthday stuff. So Sam got out of bed and tried on his trainers and ran on the spot with them for a little while. Then he stood on his skateboard, which was great. His parents had splashed out on it. It was exactly the one he wanted. A flexi-board, customised with cool silver wheels and the right trucks and everything. It would have been more fun to ride it outside, obviously, but even in his quite small bedroom, Sam was able to do some 360s and some front-side flips. Then he got Spock, the guinea pig, out of his cage and did some more 360s, but this time with the guinea pig balanced on his head. The guinea pig didn't look that keen on this. In fact, he looked down at his new master with quite a strong sense of, it's all going to be like this. I'm going to be escaping to Peru, which is where guinea pigs come from, in case you don't know, which I get the impression you don't. He had a pretty expressive face for a guinea pig, Spock, which made him somewhat different, it has to be said, from the original Spock. Then he, Sam, not Spock, ate some of the leftover marshmallow from the cake that his mum had brought up on a plate. Then he read the first few chapters of Demon Dentist, which was very funny. After 30 pages, Sam looked over at the clock, which said now 11:55 p.m. He still, amazingly, didn't feel that tired. What he did feel was a bit sad. Mainly, he felt a bit sad that his birthday was ending officially now. He sat up and said to Spock, who was lying on his chest, had it in fact tumbled down into his lap as a result of him sitting up, "Oh, Spock, I wish it was my birthday every day." Spock looked up at him with quite a strong sense of, I wish I could live in a cage made out of parsley, but we can't have everything. Just at that point, though, a light fell across the room. Sam looked up to see that the source of the light was beyond his bedroom curtains. Moonlight. Aha, he thought, if I can see moonlight, the clouds must have parted, and if the clouds have parted, I can use my telescope. So Sam got out of bed and moved over to the window. He drew the curtains and looked out. He was right. It was no longer a cloudy night. Noam Chomsky House stood on a hill, and the road from it ran down after a few miles to the river that wound through the city. Sometimes when, like now, the sky was clear and the moon came out, Sam could see all the way to the river, even without a telescope. He could even see the reflection of the moonlight on the water, lighting up a small tree-filled island that sat between the banks. But Sam wasn't interested in looking down at the water. He wanted to look up at the sky. He wanted to look up at the sky through his telescope and see the stars and the moon, all of which was suddenly out. He put his eye to the lens piece at the bottom of the end of the telescope. It was hard to see anything. All he could make out, in fact, was what appeared to be 3 or 4 massive spider legs, which at first, excitedly, he thought must be aliens, but then realised were just his eyelashes. Gradually, though, his vision got used to it, and then he could see the moon. All white and shining and pockmarked, like Grandpa Sam's face, although that was only the pockmarked bit, as Grandpa Sam's face was sort of leathery and brown, and, though friendly, very rarely shining. "I can see the moon, Spock," he said to Spock, who was now on the floor by his cage. Spock looked back at him with quite a strong sense of, "When you can see a planet made of parsley, let me know. Meanwhile, open my house, please." When Sam turned back to the telescope, though, he couldn't see the moon through it any more. This was a thing about telescopes. Even small eye movements meant that you could end up a long way from what you'd been looking at before. He scanned right, left, up and down, but couldn't see where the moon had gone. And then, what was that? A spaceship? It was black and oblong, and had a series of enormous flickering green numbers on the front of it. Oh, it was his clock, made to look much bigger and more spaceshipy because he was seeing it through the telescope. He turned the thing all the way around, away from the window, and was looking back towards his bed. Feeling a little silly, Sam began to move the telescope back around again, but not before noticing that the time was about to turn. The 59 of 11:59 had been there for a while, to midnight, and then his birthday really would be properly over. He sighed, shook his head and looked through the lens piece for one last sight of the stars. And then he saw it. Chapter 5. When You Wish Upon a Star. A shooting star. A really big one, tearing up the sky. Through the telescope it looked amazing, like a comet or a rocket or a firework. And it didn't just go in a split second, like shooting stars do. No, it stayed travelling across the night sky for what seemed like ages, in a long arc from one end of the horizon to the other. It was astonishing, beautiful. Sam couldn't believe he was the only person in the world seeing it. Surely NASA or Lodrell Park or Brian Cox or someone from the Star Wars Resistance was also watching, but he didn't think about that for too long, because while the star was still shooting across his vision, he remembered that his mum had said, "You can wish upon a star. You should wish upon a star." Sam wasn't superstitious. In fact, he had been pretty tongue-in-cheek about it when saying to his mum, just as she was putting him to bed, "Does that actually work?" But this was different. This was a star so bright and so fast and so present in the sky that it really did feel to him that it might be magical. And so, he wasn't to know this because he was looking through the telescope. On the stroke of midnight, it wasn't actually a stroke. It was a small, almost silent click. As 11:59 became 12 o'clock on his clock, he said out loud, towards the star, "I wish it could be my birthday every day." At which point the star seemed to burst into even greater light. It seemed to glow extra brightly for a second, and then it fell from the sky, straight down. Sam tried to follow it with his telescope, and for a moment he could, even though it was travelling really quickly. This star looked as if it was on a mission to come to Earth, or as if someone had shot it out of the sky. Perhaps unbeknownst to Sam, his telescope was mounted with a laser beam that had blasted into the heart of it. Unfortunately, these thoughts got in the way and meant that Sam couldn't track the journey of the star all the way down. It appeared, but this couldn't be right, to land in the middle of the river, either in the water itself or maybe on one of the islands. Sam could see one of these through the telescope, but it was dark and covered in trees, and definitely not lit up by a falling celestial object. Sam lifted his eye from the lens piece. He looked around. Nothing. It had to be said. Very magical appeared to have appeared. Or happened. His room, with its posters of the Starship Enterprise and Battlestar Galactica, was the same. On the floor stood his new skateboard and trainers and book, and Guinea Pig, who was looking at him with quite a strong sense of, "Wishing on a star? Who are you, Jiminy Cricket?" Sam felt a tiny bit disappointed. Not being superstitious, there was no real reason for him to think that wishing on a star would have any effect. But he had somehow felt wishing on this star, being so bright, would mean something. Clearly, he thought, I was wrong there. Never mind, he thought, and went over, picked Spock up, gave him a quick stroke, opened his cage and put him inside. "Happy birthday, Sam," he said to himself, one last time. Then he realised he was, at last, tired, and so went up his little ladder to his top bunk bed, shut his eyes and fell asleep immediately. Chapter 6. Birthday 2. Knock, knock. It must be Ruby, Sam assumed. She still got up really early. Little kids do, so he just ignored it. But then the knock came again. And to be honest, it sounded a bit too full and high on the door to be Ruby. It sounded like an adult's knock. He stretched his arms and sat up. "Sam! Sammy!" came his mum's voice from behind the door. "Hey, Sam!" came his dad's voice as well. It was his mum and his dad. So why were they up and waking him up so early on a Sunday morning? Well, there was an easy enough way to find out. Sam got out of bed, climbed down the ladder and opened the door to see his mum, dad and sister standing there with a tray on which lay a full English breakfast, a glass of lemonade and a doughnut. Around the plate were 11 candles. Sam looked up, frowning. They were all smiling. "Happy birthday," they all said as one. "Sorry," said Sam. "Happy birthday. We've made you breakfast in bed," said Vicky. "Your favourite, full English with lemonade and a doughnut," said Charlie. "Yes," said Ruby. "Not very healthy, actually." Sam watched, amazed, as they marched in. His mum reached up to the top bunk and placed the tray on his bed. Then she went over to the window and opened the curtains. "Come on, Sam, back to bed and tuck in," she said. Sam shook his head, but smiled. "Well, OK, thanks. Is this a joke?" "What?" said Vicky. "No, I've made it exactly as you like it." "No, I can see that," he said. "It looks lovely, but it's not my birthday. That was yesterday." "Well," said Charlie, "that was the anniversary of the day you were actually born, yes." "But we woke up this morning," said Vicky, "both with exactly the same words in our head, and those words were, 'Happy birthday, Sam.' And it made me think, there's no reason to celebrate your birth just on that date, because every day we're happy that you were born. so we should celebrate it every day." "She's right," said Charlie. "I woke up with those exact words going round and round in my head too. Happy birthday, Sam." And I figured, why not? "Really?" said Sam. Vicky nodded. "I knew you were thinking the same thing, Charlie. In fact, I had a feeling." Said Charlie, but he was nodding and looking a little surprised at himself for going along so fully with one of Vicky's feelings. "It happened to me too, actually," said Ruby. "I woke up and the first thing I thought was, 'Happy birthday, Sam.' So we went straight downstairs and started making your birthday breakfast in bed," said Vicky. Sam nodded. He looked out of the window. He walked over, in fact, to the window. The view was the same as ever. The estate, and then the roads and houses leading down to the river. There was no sign that anything amazing or magical or starry had happened during the night. "We should celebrate my birthday," he said, still looking out of the window. "Every day?" "Every day," said his mum. "Every day," said his dad. "Every day, actually," said, most surprisingly, his sister, which made Sam think about something. He'd spotted a flaw in what they were saying. What about Ruby?" he said. "Why aren't we celebrating her birthday every day?" Charlie and Vicky frowned. They looked at Ruby. Ruby looked back at them. Then Vicky's face cleared. "Well, we will do, when she's 11. That'll be when we have the same thought about her. It'll be a family tradition, I imagine." "Yes, that's right. You're all right with that, aren't you, Rube?" said Sam. "Fine," said Ruby. "It's only 4 years, which, as I'm sure you know, to a child of 7 seems only about 400. Right," said Mum. But then Charlie said, "Great, OK, I'm off out." "Where to?" said Sam. "Never you mind," his dad replied, with a nod and a wink at Vicky, who smiled back, which Sam knew was grown-up code, really obvious grown-up code for, "I'm going to go and buy Sam some presents." His dad left the room, and Sam looked back at his smiling mum and somewhat less smiling sister. Could it be real? Could the wish he made last night have come true? "Come on, Sam," said his mum. "It's not going to be here forever." Sam frowned at her. "My birthday?" "No, that is going to be here forever. I meant your breakfast." And it did smell. It had to be said, very tempting, especially the mix of bacon and donut. So Sam thought, "Thanks, Mum," and scampered up the bunk bed ladder and tucked in. And that is the end of part 1 of Birthday Boy by David Baddiel. I'll be back soon with the next part of this fantastic story and lots more stories and videos coming your way very soon. If you'd like to subscribe or hit a like, that's always appreciated. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.